Hey guys, Constance here from Cosmopolitan Cornbread. So I just got done dehydrating a whole bunch of zucchini, and so I am putting them in a jar. Now the dehydrated zucchini, which is kind of zucchini chips here, these can be easily stored away. And then when I make soup, I can just take these, drop them in soup, they'll rehydrate, and ta-da, you've got zucchini for your soup. So it is a very easy way to preserve zucchini for later use. I will say, as I was cutting this all up, slicing it and dehydrating it, which by the way, I sliced this with my new mandolin, which was a gift from one of my lovely subscribers, and it has been used quite a bit since I received it. As I was slicing up the zucchini and putting it here in my dehydrator, I actually got to thinking, I wonder if it is possible to rehydrate dehydrated zucchini and then chop it up real fine and use it to make zucchini bread. I am actually going to try that one of these days before too long, and I'll let you know if it turns out or not, or if it was a complete and total flop. But you know, I figure it's worth a shot, and if it works, how awesome would that be? Looks like these are just going to fit. So this was about, this right here is about 5 good-sized zucchinis, all dehydrated and fit into a quart jar. So I can put these up. Alright, so my dehydrator, my canning supplies, they have been pretty much out here in the kitchen non-stop for weeks now. But things are beginning to wind down just a little bit, which is both a good and bad thing. It's kind of a sad thing because it means the summer garden, the spring garden is winding up, and we're pretty much reaching the end of it. But then at the same time, it's kind of a good thing because, man, I need a break. Just a little bit of a break. I've got some projects, other projects that I really need to work on, like finishing painting my kitchen trim and things like that. But in any case, while I'm here in the kitchen, the next thing I'm actually about to do is to bake some bread. So I think I'll go ahead and start pulling that stuff out. While I'm here in the kitchen with all of you, I thought I would talk about a few things that some of them are questions that I've been getting asked, and I thought I would address those. And then the other is, well, actually, let me just get this out of the way. Those of you who follow me on social media, Instagram or Facebook, last weekend we had something awful happen. Most of you know we have 4 dogs, and they are spoiled rotten, wonderful members of the family. And last weekend on Sunday night, it was a normal night. Everything was fine. We have our normal routine. I tell the dogs, okay doggies, time for bed, and they all run outside to use the bathroom one more time, and then they come in and they go straight to the bedroom. Everything was normal. Went to bed and we went to sleep. And about 10 o'clock that night, I got woken up by the sound of China, our husky mix, panting really hard. And she does that when she needs to use the bathroom, or if she's not feeling good. Generally, it's the indicator that she needs to go outside because she's under some sort of stress. Panting really heavily is kind of her stress signal. And I called to her because I heard her panting, and I'm like, Cheetah, do you need to go outside? And ordinarily she would run over to the side of the bed and you know, come up to me like, yes, 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 I need to go out. Well, I called her, but she didn't come over to the side of the bed. But I heard her like banging on the wall, and it just didn't sound right. So I turned on the light and walked over to see what was going on, over to that side of the bed where the dog bed was at. And I called her again, and when I did, she sat up super tall against the wall, and then she started kicking her legs. And it's like she couldn't walk. And so I woke up Mr. Smith, and I said, hey, something's wrong with Cheetah. And he came and looked at her, and as soon as he laid eyes on her, he was like, something's wrong, something's seriously wrong. And I called the emergency vet because, of course, it was the middle of the night. Our vet was not going to be open. Told them what was going on. They're like, you definitely need to bring her in. And so we proceeded to attempt to get her out to my truck. Every time she tried to move, or every time we tried to move her, she began flailing about. It was awful. She didn't whine, she didn't cry or bark or anything like that. She just panted super, super heavily and flailed about. There was a lot of times where, in the process of trying to work her down the hallway, I mean, we even tried to wrap her in a blanket to try and immobilize her and restrain her so that we could carry her out to my truck. And it took us forever just to get her out of the bedroom and down the hallway. And finally we ended up calling a friend and having them come over and help us, because we needed more than just the two of us to do it, because she's a big dog. By this point, I was bleeding, Mr. Smith was bleeding, because she was flailing about and she would like catch us with her dew claw. And so we finally got her in the truck, took her to the vet, and without going into all of the details, the short, condensed version of it is that she had had a stroke. And it was pretty devastating. She was not going to survive. And so the veterinarian, who was extremely compassionate, very big-hearted person, they had sedated her and went ahead and we ended her suffering. And they kept her there, and we had her cremated, and she is now sitting in a wooden case on our mantle in the living room. It was a pretty devastating weekend and week, to be honest. It came without warning. I mean, she was only 6 years old, perfectly healthy, and everything was normal until it wasn't. But it's been a rough kind of a week. So in any case, that is what happened. I was not able to talk about it last week, and I was just not even going to go there. Like I said, it really took us by surprise. But so those of you who saw my post on social media, that is what happened, and we're definitely heartbroken over it all. So with that, let's move on to happier topics. I'm going to pull out my wheat and get started making some bread here. Alright, so just a quick tip I wanted to share with you guys. This is something I've been doing for years. Right here inside my cabinet, which is right above the area that I work the most, or at least where I do all of my baking, I have a laminated printout of the kind of staple recipes that I make the most, or I have made over the years. I have things like my bread recipe, my French bread, quick pizza dough, bacon cheddar bread, cornbread, biscuits, dumplings, and waffles. The staple bread recipes, so that I can just open it up, it's right there. These are things that in the past I made all the time. I would make at least one of these every single week. And so having this kind of shortcut, you know, quick reference guide right there in my cabinet just makes things easy. So while I'm working on my bread dough here, I wanted to mention also something I've had a bunch of questions about, and that is the Kajari melon. Sadly, I was only able to get a couple of melons so far. There were several melons growing out there up on the trellis. 2 of them I was able to pick, and then the next 3 rotted on the vine. I don't know what happened, but it's just like they just rotted on the vine. I went out there to pick them and they were no good. There's right now about 3 more that are about baseball size or close to baseball size. So hopefully we'll get some more. I did film the footage of the very first Kajari melon that I was able to pick and to try, and so I will show you that right here. So this morning I went out and I was doing chores, and I looked at the Kajari melons and I thought, these must be getting close. Well, just now, a few hours later, I was walking past the Kajari melons and I smelled it awful strong, so I stopped and I turned and I looked, and one of them had busted open. So I'm hoping it did it because it was ripe, and not because we got a bunch of rain or anything like that. So I'm going to cut it open and give it a try, and we'll see what happens. Oh, this may have been overripe. So when I tried it, I just ate a little bit because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to have some sort of reaction to it. And so I tried it, I ate a little bit, and then I just kind of waited to make sure. My body had 0 reaction. I was so happy. I am able to eat a melon that tastes fantastic. And it tasted like a cross between a honeydew and a cantaloupe. And I cannot eat either of those anymore. So having something that tastes like them, and I can eat it without reaction, oh, it's awesome. So hopefully I will get more Kajari melons off of the vine. And I'm kind of thinking I might need to grow more of it next year, since I know I am able to actually eat it without incident. So another question I've been getting asked a lot recently is, what version of Bible do I use? And I actually have two versions that I like to use. One of them is the NASB, which is a pretty popular, very common version of the Bible. And then the other one I like is the TLV, which the TLV is a little bit different. It uses a lot of the old Hebrew terms, Hebrew names, and it's a really neat, it's just a really neat way of reading through the Bible and seeing the old terms and making those connections. And so I really enjoy that version as well. Those are the two that I generally will use anytime I'm studying. So the next question that I have been asked, sort of related in a way, is about podcasts. When I am out on the tractor, if I'm not listening to worship music, then I am listening to a podcast, and I enjoy listening to a few podcasts. There's some that I listen to once in a while. There's others that I listen to on a pretty regular basis. And it kind of ties into the TLV version of the Bible, in that one of them that I listen to very frequently is called Daily Bread for Busy Moms. And it's actually a Bible reading podcast. It's like daily scriptures, daily bread. But it is actually recorded and based out of Israel, and the version of the Bible that they read from is the TLV version of the Bible. So it's just a very enjoyable, very peaceful sort of podcast, and it's a group of moms who just take turns recording the podcast of the scriptures for the day, and every once in a while you'll actually hear one of their little kids in the background because they're moms. And it's just, like I said, it's a very enjoyable podcast for daily scriptures. Another one that I listen to frequently is Unashamed by the Robertsons. If you're familiar with the Duck Dynasty TV show, that is something that my family used to watch every week. We couldn't wait for new episodes to come on. We enjoyed watching that as a family. And the Robertsons have their own podcast. It's very good. Let's see, I have a couple that I listen to periodically that are generally work related. I don't listen to them very often. Basically, if I see a topic that looks interesting, I'll listen to it. But the only other ones I can think of off the top of my head that I listen to on a regular basis would be the Choosing Simple podcast by Amy Fuel, who is the founder of Homesteaders of America. Another one that comes to mind is The Way I Heard It by Mike Rowe. Very fun stories that sometimes have a little bit of a twist, so that's kind of an entertaining sort of one. Alright, my bread dough is doing its first rise, and right now I am ripping apart my Ball Blue Book, my canning book, because it was falling apart. It was completely falling apart, and so I don't lose any pages, I am just going to go ahead and remove every page and put it into a binder here. I've got page protectors so that I can continue to use my my blue book and all of that, and not worry about losing anything. Plus, it being inside these document protectors, it kind of protects it from splashes and all that too. So let's see. The next question that I have had people inquiring about, several people asked about, is the fawn. There was a fawn, in case you missed it, who I have not seen a mother. I've seen this fawn on camera multiple times. I have seen it with my eyeballs out in the middle of the pasture. I've walked right up to it within, I don't know, 50 feet maybe of this fawn. Looked everywhere, never saw a doe anywhere around, and I just felt like that was very odd. And so we are continuing to put deer feed out in the pasture. I have a couple different spots for it. Of course, we're feeding the raccoons just as much as we're feeding the deer. But I went out last night and I pulled my SD cards to check the cameras again, and once again that fawn is still around. So he or she has survived thus far, and I did catch it on camera again the other night. And of course there's other fawns hanging around as well. So at this point the fawn is still around, still hanging on, still seems to be making it, so that's always a good thing. Hopefully he or she is able to survive on his own and all that good stuff. And yes, I know it is like 95 degrees outside right now, and yes, I'm drinking hot tea, but when it's a gazillion, frillion degrees outside, hot tea doesn't seem so hot, in my opinion. You know, when we lived in Alaska, there was a Cold Stone Creamery, and I would take the kids there every so often, and we enjoyed having ice cream up there. And you know what? You would think that when it is negative 40 degrees outside, nobody's gonna want to be eating ice cream. But here's the thing. When it's negative 40 degrees outside, that frozen ice cream doesn't seem so cold. And you would never imagine this, but in Alaska, they eat more ice cream per capita than any other state in the country. At least they did when we lived there. I don't know if that statistic still holds, but it was that way about 8 years ago. So, one last question that I have been getting a lot of people asking about is in regards to seeds. Where do I purchase my seeds? Where do I get my seeds from that I use out in the garden? Well, I get my seeds from a few different places. There is one in particular that I do by far get my seeds from more than any other, and that is Baker Creek. I am a huge fan of Baker Creek. I love the seeds that I have gotten from them. They have a huge variety, things that you may have never heard of, like the Kajari melon, like the loofah gourds. Just they have a huge variety, and every year they have that great big seed catalog that has everything in it, and it's like being a kid and having that Sears catalog, and when that thing would come in mail, you would just sit and you would go through it for hours and hours and hours, dreaming of what you wanted for the holidays. And that is our modern day Sears catalog. It's the Baker Creek seed catalog. Love going through that and just imagining all the things that you could grow. So Baker Creek is my #1, but there are other places that I will get seeds from as well. Not every company is going to have every seed that you want, and so it's great to have other options, and you know, they may run out, so you might want to know where are other places that you can get seeds from. The other ones that I personally use are MI Gardener. I use Southern Exposure Seed Catalog, the Seed Savers Exchange, and actually just last week, for the first time, I ordered seeds from Haas Tools. They've got a really great variety of seeds as well. And you know, my preference has of course always been getting seeds that are non-GMO. I have a preference for heirloom seeds whenever possible, tried and true varieties like the wonderful Dr. Weiss tomatoes that I will grow those every year. They are amazing, and I get those seeds from Baker Creek. There may be other companies that offer those varieties as well, but you know, I'm a creature of habit. If I always get my seeds from someplace, I'm going to continue getting them from there as long as it's always a good experience. So those are kind of my go-tos as far as where I get my seeds from. Of course, I do have subscribers send me seeds now and again. I've received lots of seeds for last year. I grew the, what was it called? Sugar something squash. Those were seeds from one of my subscribers. The French green beans that I have growing out there on the trellis in the garden this year, those were from one of my subscribers. I've received flower seeds like Cosmos, and so I of course do receive seeds from others as gifts as well, and those are always welcomed, of course, because as someone who loves to collect seeds, I would never turn down an offer for seeds. So that is it for now. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video. While my bread is doing its rise, I'm actually going to get started with planting some seeds. So it is time to get some things started. So thanks for hanging out with me here in the kitchen while I took care of a few things and answered some questions. Yeah, thanks for hanging out with me. So my name is Constance from Cosmopolitan Cornbread, and I'll talk to y'all next time.